Okay, we're going to get started here. Are you going to go? Yeah, thanks. We ran a little over in worship today. We had a lot of things going on, but we do want to get started with our Sunday school session today. Our speaker today needs absolutely no introduction. You all know her better than I do, but you might not know some of the experiences that she's had. And therefore, we thought it was important for Connie to share some of her life experiences. I know she's been on some very interesting trips, and I think we'll all learn something from it. So let me have a prayer, and then we will turn it over to Connie. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity we have to be together today for our wonderful worship service today, for Rachel's message, and all those who had part. We're excited about our youth going to National Youth Conference. And we're excited for people who respond to opportunities to serve you. And truly, it is a joy when we serve others in your name. So thank you for Connie being available to serve you in many opportunities, and bless her as she shares with us this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Connie.
Good morning. I thought I need to put out a disclaimer before I start. Our daughter Lori was here a couple weeks ago, and she's this great speaker. I don't call myself a speaker, and she did not get that ability from me. So I am here to tell you my story this morning, but not as a formal speaker. And to start with, the bulletin this morning, I sat down and looked at it. First, you had Leanne, This Is My Stuff. Then you had a sermon on joy through service. Then you had a song on Here I Am, Lord. And then, Will You Let Me Be Your Servant? All of these this morning really spoke to me. And this is my journey, what we talked about this morning. And I'm hoping with my presentation here that you can feel God leading, where God has led me through this journey. I don't always call it a servant. I've always focused on volunteering, which to me, I suppose, listening to Rachel this morning is pretty much the same thing. So to take you to where I am now, I'm starting out with a little history. I'll look back here. I grew up in Chickies Church of the Brethren. I've been a Church of the Brethren girl all my life. Two people in this audience can attest to that. I grew up alongside Anna Mary Gingrich, Glick, and Doris Brenneman Ahmet grew up in Chickies with me. And I'm very fortunate. I came from a church background. My grandparents were Church of the Brethren. I grew up in a family of five kids. There was kind of almost two families of us, 3 girls and 2 boys. The 2 boys came later. But I grew up, Anna Mary will know where this is, in Potter County, where her family and my family often went on vacations. But I grew up knowing that family was always there. Friends were always there. Our friends were church friends way back then. That was something that really impacted my life. As we grew, all of our different families went different ways, but we still had that church background, and to Mom and Dad, church was a very important thing in our lives. There was, like I said, there was 3 families. These 3 were the 3, and growing up, it was always the Schaefer girls. We were always the Schaefer girls. We still, when I see somebody tells me, when they recognize me, not too long ago I met somebody from Chickies, and they said, so you're one of the Schaefer girls, right? So I still identify as one of the Schaefer girls. Growing up in the Church of the Brethren, though, we did a lot of youth group things. We did a lot of things. And then I started getting into 4-H and started my horizons start expanding a little bit. And I grew up in 4-H. I was in 4-H, and I happened to meet this special guy in 4-H. And my world changed. My grandmother couldn't understand why I would date a Mennonite guy. What's wrong with all the Brethren guys? But because Brethren was such a big thing. But actually, I graduated from high school one year. We got married the next year. Moved farm life. Back then, that's the way you did it. We did it. And the next year had our first child, Lori. So family farm, an excellent way to, here's just a couple pictures of our family as we're growing, a church directory picture. But the family farm was a great place to raise our kids. On the farm, everybody worked together. It was a life I grew up with, and Ken grew up with. It's just, to me, was the ideal way to raise a family. But while we were doing that, we were very involved with the church here. Ken grew up in the Mennonite church at Mechanic Grove, but this was a good place, we thought, to come and start our family. So our kids grew up with all of your kids. I see many of you here that are kids, the Trimbles, the Glicks, the Kreiders, the Hersheys. Our kids grew up with all of your kids, and I think that's such a special thing that you can. That was our family, our church family, to grow up with. They grew up on the farm, a special, very special place to. Still think it was the best place of all to raise our kids. They were in 4-H, the same as we were. I grew up in 4-H. Ken grew up in 4-H. We met in 4-H. Our kids were in 4-H, and we were 4-H leaders. So 4-H has always been a big. It's an organization that teaches kids life skills that I think they take through with them into their adult life. There are so many ways here at church. Another one of our farm, one of the great things on the farm was one of my special things. Grandchildren, we get the whole way to grandchildren, and to have them see you and to be a role model, I think, is very important. Our kids and our grandchildren have always seen us as part of the church. Many special ways this church has helped us over the years. We were youth advisors. That picture with the only two children in front of the mobile home, we started out in a mobile home on the farm, and we were youth advisors our second year of being married, and we had the youth quite often to that mobile home. That was back when Cindy and Dale Wallinger were in the youth group, Terry Kreider, Larry Kreider. I wasn't a whole lot older than they were, but that's the first time we were youth advisors. Many areas in the church that have played a special role for me in the things that we've done. We were deacons very early on. Neoma Wanger, Martha Kreider, Eleanor Kreider were all special people to me who guided me through some of the difficult times. I thought that they'll always hold a very special place in my heart. I've volunteered here in the nursery, and we taught Sunday school. Do you remember when there was a special needs class here in church? I was kind of instrumental in helping to get that started. We've been youth advisors for numerous times. A really neat thing about the kids going to National Youth Conference next weekend is, back in '84, Ken and I were youth advisors. And it came through to us that National Youth Conference was in 2 years. Mechanic Grove had never gone to National Youth Conference. We really didn't know too much about it. We decided that why couldn't our kids go? And at that time, we had a huge youth group. It's when our kids were all in the youth group. So we found out more about it, and they were going in 2 years. That meant we had to raise all the funds in 2 years. But in '86 was the first time Mechanic Grove Youth went to National Youth Conference, and Ken and I helped raise all the funds and happened to be finishing our term as youth advisors and never got to go, but we did. We were glad to see the kids go for the first time. I've volunteered here at church as Vacation Bible School coordinator many times. Like I said, church board, witness commission, building committee. Some of you have been involved with some of the Penn State extension programs I had brought here to Mechanics Grove over the years. The super cupboards, we did them for quite a number of years. I know Carol and a few people helped out with that, where we brought young mothers here into the church. First-time young mothers, helped them, teach them how to buy groceries, how to cook food, how to take care of their children. That was a special thing we did here. And I grew each time I helped do one of those things and organize one of those things. It was a growing time in my life. And of course, our family kept growing. This is our 50th wedding anniversary a couple years ago. There's always been a few scriptures that have guided my life. Early on in Ken's and my relationship, Romans 8:28 meant a lot to me. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who were called according to his purpose. And we go back on that once in a while. All things will be good if we've tried to follow for his purpose. Another thing, scripture that I think that has led me through the years to all of my volunteering has been Luke 12:48. To whom much is given, much is required. To me, it means we are held responsible for what we have. We've been blessed with talents, wealth, knowledge, time. A big one of mine was time. I was on the farm. People still tell me, you never worked, did you? No, I never worked. I didn't hold a job. I actually did one year. The year between high school graduation and getting married, I worked at Elizabethtown Crippled Children's Hospital and took care of a couple children there daily. And I worked at Agway one summer to help out. But other than that, they say, and I say, no, I guess I never did have a paying job. We've always had a good, Ken makes it and I either spend it or give it away, so it's always worked out quite well. So, okay. This is our family as of 3 years ago when our oldest granddaughter got married. When you look back and see where all the kids have come, you give them a base, you give them your faith and foundation. We're talking about foundations here with the kids moving on to going to NYC. And you pray. That's what you do. And we are so joyed. Esther, the bride in this picture, our oldest grandchild, started this week as associate pastor at Neffsville Mennonite Church. And it's just such a blessing and joy for all of us. Me, especially, to have her back in the county, and never thought she'd be here in the county. But those are blessings. Some of my volunteer positions over the years, I know Bob asked me to speak about children's disaster services, but I have a few volunteer positions that I think led me to that have helped me over the years. My first one that I really went out on a limb was with Josh McDowell's Care Lifts. I went a couple times to Moscow, to Russia, and to Belarus on his Care Lift teams. I worked in, we took food, we took supplies into orphanages in Belarus. We went and helped out in the orphanages and helped give the children some contact when the people there had no time to do that. It was a totally eye-opening and I have a heart for children. So to me, to see children that really just needed a hug, needed somebody to hold them and to let them know they loved them, just really touched my heart. Then the second time, I was in Moscow, and we did more of a sharing our faith with children. Here we're giving gospel bracelets and teaching them what the different beads mean toward their salvation. I think this one was my hardest one. This one we were told, the guy in the very back was my teammate. The guy on the very, I'm not wrong, on the back, on your left was an interpreter. We were given a park to go to, and we would go and tell the gospel to anybody we met. I actually think that was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. Growing up Church of the Brethren, we know Christ the risen Savior, we know, but to go out through an interpreter, giving him the words of your salvation to share with somebody else, Clark and I, we sat and we prayed and we went through our Bible and we tried, okay, so is this really, making sure it's right, even though we knew in our hearts, we knew how we were saved and that Christ was our Savior. So this was a very important volunteer position for me also. My other one was, I grew up in, like I told you, I grew up in 4-H, kids grew up in 4-H, Ken's and I have always been in 4-H. I had been I served as a 4-H leader here in the county for 40-some years. I served on Penn State Extension, regional, county, and state boards. Back in the early 90s, communism had fallen. The wall came down in '89. I was asked if I would go to Poland, help set up 4-H camps and clubs, and teach volunteerism. Okay, that was another eye-opening experience for me. In the beginning, we went and I went to schools and after-school programs. It was 4-H camp. We taught them, the kids, they were under communism all these years. 4-H was to teach them decision-making skills and life skills that they had never been taught before, and teach their parents volunteerism. And why? And the biggie was, okay, so why are you here? I'm volunteering. You're not being paid? No, I'm not being paid. I'm here because you are my brother and sister, and I want to help you. It's a very difficult thing to get through with a communist background. I took some of we then did 4-H exchange trips. I took some of our Lancaster County kids, we'd go over there, do camps for 2 weeks, and they'd stay in Polish homes, and then we would have Polish kids back here. I don't know if any of you know her, it's Kim McLaughlin Tucker, who was one of my kids. Here you have one, here's Mr. Boyd, Gerald Boyd, who's a teacher at Coreyville Elementary, he was one of mine. So they're all local people here, some of them. Amy Strickler-Willeller's on there. She was there with me. But just teaching, let me go back a minute. Taking our kids over there and watching them come to the realization that is only by God's grace that they were born in the United States. And that, you know, you can only take one suitcase for 2 weeks, but I can't live out of one suitcase for 2 weeks. And in 2 days, they're saying, Connie, do you know I have more in my one suitcase than what they have totally that they own? Just watching teenage kids come to those realizations that, you know, no matter where we live, we all want the same things. We want to be loved. We want to be understood. We want to have friends. We want to have, I think it's a life-changing experience to have teenagers learn that on their own, you know, come to that realization on their own. That's just so neat. Because of my 10 years of working in Poland for Penn State Extension, they started a new award in 2004, and I was given the Lifetime Volunteer Award for the first time, which was a very humbling experience for me because I know so many people that had volunteered for so long before that. But that award gave me this opportunity. I was also then given the opportunity and asked if I would welcome President Bush when he came to Lancaster County in 2004. So that was kind of a neat thing. I've served on many things here for the Church of Brethren. I served in Bethany Seminary for 10 years, and that was another learning experience and eye-opening experience as not a person not coming through the academic world. It was a very good experience, a little challenging at times, but I think I was put there for a reason, and it was a very good experience. And of course, you have all the volunteer positions through the Church of the Brethren. Soup kitchen, I think for 20, 30 years, I never kept track. They tell me it's more than 30, but I gathered volunteers to go to the soup kitchen. So there's Walter, and Walter was here for a while, I think Ellie keeps the closest contact with Walter. We sponsored him for some time. What I'm really here, Bob asked me to hit on is Children's Disaster Services. Children's Disaster Services comes under Brethren Disaster Ministries, the same as you're going out to fix houses, you're going out after the disasters happen. Children's Disaster Ministries goes out immediately after a disaster happens. We have to be called out by Red Cross or by FEMA. In 1980, it was decided, there was a group of Church of the Brethren people that decided that these parents need some help. After you have no home, you have no job, you have nothing left, and now you're supposed to go through all of these different organizations and tell them your problems and try to get help. And it was decided that parents needed respite to get a clear head and to be able to do what they needed without their children having to listen to this over and over again. So Children's Disaster Services was started, and it was started for many years. It only worked in FEMA recovery centers. And a FEMA recovery center is set up that after a disaster, all the different agencies that you might get funds from, that you might be able to get help from, are all in this FEMA recovery center. And the parents go from one to the other and just give their story over and over again. What we would do in that situation is we are background checked. We have all the background checks you need today. We have CPR, we have first aid, we always have security standing there, but we are a safe place for the parents to leave their children so they can think about what they have to do. We're equipped. You go through a 27-hour weekend of training before you go out the first time. You have to be recommended for the program, have 2 letters of recommendation. Your training is usually held in some church basement somewhere. Mine was in Westminster Church of the Brethren in their fellowship hall. You sleep on cots, somebody 2 feet away from you, because you have to know that could be the situation you're sleeping in when you go out, and you have to know that you can handle doing those kinds of things. It's a very humbling situation, but I found it very rewarding. We are certified, as I said. We are equipped. We provide respite. I had heard about Children's Disaster Services, but some of you know Cheryl Foss from Chickies. She had always been telling me, Connie, you need to go and get trained for Children's Disaster Service. And it's something I just kept putting off because you got to plan it and do it, and we were all busy at that time. And then 9/11 hit, and I was not equipped to go. I was not trained, and they were looking for people badly. And that really touched my heart that I put that off and didn't do it. So 2002, I had my first training. 2003, we do not take many pictures in shelters because these children, we have to have signed permissions to do it, for one thing, because these children are put in our care, but I do have some that's from a few places. But I started out with 2003 in Hurricane Isabel, and we were stationed right outside of Richmond, Virginia. I happened to be stationed in a church, my team. I went out as a child caregiver. You start by going through training as a child caregiver, and you go out and you're the ones that actually hands-on with the children. But we were stationed in a church in Richmond, and we woke up the first morning at 4:30 in the morning to all this commotion, and we found out that the Southern Baptists who feed all of the people in disasters had this huge kitchen that they set up, was right outside our windows. So we were waking up every morning at 4:30 in the morning. Through 2004 was kind of an interesting one for me. Again, I was going out as a child caregiver. Hurricane Ivan and Charlie and Francis and Jeannie all hit Florida and the southern coast and came around into the Carolinas, and they needed so many people. I was sent to Florida for Hurricane Ivan, and then Charlie was on the way. So they decided we either had to shelter in place or get out of town before it hit. And Gulf Breeze had been waiting for us, so we decided we were going to pack up and try to head out of town and get to Gulf Breeze and out of the way of the hurricane to help people over there that had been waiting for weeks. So we did that, and in that period of time, my Norma, my project manager that I was childcare under, had decided that I should take care of doing all the arrangements to get everybody's plane tickets changed, all the car rentals changed, and find a place for us to stay as we went. Under FEMA, we, Children's Disaster Services, or the team itself, finds places to stay. So we were calling ahead, trying to find a church in the area that might put us up. And then once we did. We ended up staying in a church in a pastor's office because it's the only room in the office in the church that had air conditioning. And it was hot. It was hurricane season. We were down in Gulf Breeze, Louisiana, and a lady came in and said, "You can't have these ladies sleeping in sleeping bags on the floor here." And so she opened a house up that nobody was using, a second home for us to use. But I still remember being given the task of getting like 10 people's airline tickets changed, all this type of thing. And by the end of that time, my project manager recommended that I take the training for project managers because I got everybody home safely and got all of our cars changed, and it was a real task, but it did happen. So we go out equipped to set up. It was always with FEMA. Hurricane Katrina changed that. We needed people on the ground with mega shelters, and they decided they would put us in shelters as well as FEMA recovery centers. So picture a shelter with 200 people in it, with cots 2 feet apart, and all these children in there that have nothing to do. All these parents that are trying to think of how they are going to move forward tomorrow, how they are going to move forward today, who are they going to talk to, what is our next step. We go and take care of we set up child care centers in the shelters and give the parents so much time each day. We can't take them all, but you give them a couple hours each day that you will take their child. Now we're talking about children. We usually do not take infants because that's too much one-on-one. We take elementary age kids mostly into middle school if we can, if we have enough help. But you'll see some of the ages here are a little different. We go in with a kit of comfort, which is the size of a pretty big suitcase. We can set up a whole child care center out of that, as long as they give us a clean, we sometimes have to do our own cleaning to find a space to put it in. So I've been out since 2003, I've been out for hurricanes. I've been out for, I have not been out. They go out for hurricanes, they go out for just major flooding. Been out into the North Carolinas where just major flooding into the low areas. I've been into Texas for numerous times for a lot of flooding. Here, this picture is one of the things that we do to help children relax. This is sand, not sand, this is rice acting as sand. Rice or beans are a really great soothing thing, even for an adult. If you're ever stressed out, get a pan of rice or sand, and it can calm you down pretty quickly. Rice, sand, beans, whatever. It's a very calming thing, but it's one of the things that we work with them with. Like I say, Hurricane Katrina changed things. I went and took my first project manager training in 2005, and that's right before Hurricane Katrina hit. They reimagined and CDS over that time, and we started working in shelters. Then Hurricane Sandy hit. Here's one of my teams. I can go out with 4 people. My largest group I've been out with under me is 20 people. And then we usually work in multi groups. Here's some of our little guys that are just so happy. Here's this came out in Florida. We were taking care of a big population of Hispanics, and they were just so appreciative, so happy, and they would try to get somebody to help them with their English to write us thank you notes, and it was always kind of a heartwarming thing. Then there's one other training to go through in CDS, and that is for mass trauma. I did take that in, let me see. I lose track of the times we did it. 2013. And right after I had my training, I was asked if I would lead a team to Boston following the Boston Marathon shooting. And with mass casualties, we set up Red Cross sets up family centers where people that have had, let's say, family members as victims, whether they are victim themselves, they can come to without the public knowing where it is. I never know till I get there where one of these centers are. We take care of the children so they can listen to whatever the local government officials, police officials, whatever is happening, can give them briefings. You don't need children to hear all those types of things. This, again, was a very humbling learning experience for me and a very rewarding one, a difficult one. Here's one that we encourage children to do a lot of artwork, because they can't, mom and dad have no time to listen. They have other things to do. So we're there to do the listening and the encouraging. And here a little girl had drawn this picture, and it looks so put together, I thought, until she put the wind coming in and ruining all her things. And that was her way of expressing what happened and her fears, you know. So we encourage them to do all these things. Then I had the experience, this again, a natural wildfires can be natural. They can be arson set, but I had the chance, one of my last big deployments was California for wildfires. And when you go through areas, it totally hit me different than going through areas with flooding. Flooding, most times the water goes down and things are there. Fire goes through and there is not much there. It's a very, very devastating time. Here we responded, and I had this is one of my bigger groups. We responded to California, and we set up in shelters that they had. Shelters are to be a temporary thing. Shelters are never long haul. CDS is one of the first organizations that they ask in a shelter to possibly leave. If people in a shelter become too comfortable, they're given food, they're given shelter, they're given services. We give them babysitting. And I can understand, if you have lost everything and somebody is giving you these things, it's hard to think about tomorrow. But every once in a while, we have to start bringing reality back. And I've been out on call numerous times on deployment, and as a project manager, I meet every morning with all the Red Cross people and the people in charge, and we help decide what is happening, what the numbers are, what we should be doing. Numerous times I've been told, it's time you pull out, because they have to face reality and start thinking what they are going to do next. And it's a hard thing to do when they say you're leaving, you know, because we were helping them. Mom can get a shower. We do not usually take infants, but if the situation is right, it's one of those things that each deployment is different. Each one, we have guidelines, but we decide, and that was one of my jobs as a project manager, is deciding, helping with Red Cross, deciding those guidelines for us. We load up our rental vehicles. This is the first, I never would be back to wearing masks again in California for wildfire until COVID hit and they become pretty complacent again. But out there in the wild, we had to in the wildfires. A little tidbit about we stay. We learned that we can stay we go with suitcases. sleeping bags, pillows, whatever you might need for 2 weeks. We got to California. I got to California with about 20 people, met up, and we processed in at the Red Cross Center. And then the lady that was to give me the assignments for everybody said, we have a little problem. We don't have a place for you to stay. And the hotels are filled. With Red Cross, quite often, if they can, they will put us in hotels because they think we need a good night's sleep to be able to work. Red Cross does that. We go out as Red Cross when they call us. So she said, I don't know where we're going to put you. And I said, well, give us a shelter for the night. Well, the shelters are full. There are staff shelters sometimes. Here, she said, we do have this one Catholic church that has a shelter, and they tell me they have about 50 cots left. How about going there for the night? Fine with us. It's a bed and it's a shelter. We get there. The shelter is filled with young male migrant workers who were forced out of their migrant camp because the vineyards and the whole hillsides were on fire. So I go in and check it out and come out. I said, sorry, ladies, I hate to tell you this, but tonight our roommates are all young male Guatemalans. And they weren't so sure about that. So you see the lady standing. Well, between her and the young gentleman in his cot on his phone in the foreground, they decided that since I was the leader, I had to be the one in between. That was my cot. I slept between them and the couple hundred Guatemalans. But you know, it was one of the better experiences we had. We had security guards. These guys got up and left quietly at 4:30 in the morning. Since they were all male, it was only like 20 of us that had one bathroom. That was a plus. We didn't have to share it with them. We got to know some of them. Some of them spoke English, but there was actually what we thought was not going to be a very good experience turned out to be one of the best. And when another shelter opened up for us, we said, we're good. We'll stay right here. And one of the best things I get to do once in a while, and this is still my best thing to do when I'm out on CDS, is to once in a while just get to hold a baby. We do not take care of infants very often because they need to be with their mothers. They are not understanding what's being said, so that's not an issue. One other experience, I guess, that I had, new experience I had with CDS was I was asked to be the first CDS project manager when Hurricane Sandy was coming up the East Coast. If I would go and shelter in place before the storm hit, to be on the ground to help decide and what was needed afterward to help assess. So they tell you where to pick up your renter car, and I headed to New Brunswick, New Jersey, north of Princeton, and sat in a hotel without electric till the storm. So that was another. You step out and you let God. Now, quite often people ask me, so do you know what you're doing? No. Do you know who you're going out with? I'm given an email telling me who's showing up on this deployment. But it always works. I've met the nicest people, men, women, from all over the country who come and who say, I have time to go in this deployment, who answer the call, and it has always been very, very rewarding. I guess it always comes back to me to the, when you do it to the least of one of these, you're doing it for Christ. That's always been kind of very important to me. Another, Deuteronomy 31:6, so be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic, for the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. So in the last 40 years, I guess my motto has been step out and let God. And it's getting a little harder as I get older, but I think it's still a pretty important thing that I need to do. I did get yesterday, I want to finish up with some current stats for you from CDS. I got these from Lisa Couch, the Associate Director of Children's Services in New Windsor yesterday. Our current CDS stats are 116,800 children have been served by 3,791 caregivers in 303 disasters since 1980. We have already had almost 400 children contacts this year, and we are not even into hurricane season, she says, and it's supposed to be a big one. 2020 was our 40th anniversary, and we went over the $100,000, it is lots of dollars, but 100,000 children served mark. Uvalde has been the biggest response so far this year, along with Wildfire, ongoing support for the Haitian Refugee Center in Southern California, where they are partnering with the United Methodist. Be in prayer for all. I mean, it's happening. I think we live in such a great, I mean, we're so blessed to live where we live. We don't get hurricane, we very rarely, you know, if people say they can remember hurricane, we don't really get tornadoes. One might go through. We are so blessed where we live. Every time I go out and come home, I come home with quite a lot of emotions. One's kind of relief for getting home after the tensions of always having to be up each day, making sure my team of 20 are physically, emotionally, mentally safe and doing what we're there to do. One's guilt. I always come home with some guilt. And I have to work through that. Guilt almost for coming home to where we come home, to a safe house, a warm house with a roof over my head, knowing where I'm going to eat tomorrow. And I also come home with lots of gratitude and thankfulness. So I hope, I encourage you. I mean, they're looking for people to go to Tennessee. If you have any skills, God can use them no matter what they are. Your time is a big thing he can use. So I hope I've gotten my message of hope and thankfulness and gratitude through to you this morning. And then there's a few things we like to do in the past, you know. Ken and I like to take off on the motorcycle or sit at home on the deck and watch the river flow by. Thank you.
Have any of you been on disaster relief work? How many of you been? Okay, yes, several of you been. It's quite a blessing, but I think you're right. When you come back home, you just realize how grateful we are for the blessings that we have.
And you don't.
It takes some courage to go out like Connie does. I call it going out in faith and not by sight, because you don't know what. I
have no idea when I get on the plane. I know names, but I then have to find, you don't know personalities. In all the years I've been doing it now, I've only ever sent one person home. There are people that get out there and in the uncertainty of what we're doing, really cannot handle it. And as project manager, one of my jobs is I have evaluated a couple people, and I sit down, I fill out evaluation forms, and I sit down with them and go over it. And I only sent one person home during a deployment, but I have had to say, I don't think you're cut out for it. And they agree with me. It's much more than what they thought. But there's other ways. You don't have to go out for 2 weeks to do something like this. We can all find. I enjoy going with Don and Paul to Harrisburg. The Brethren Housing is a great thing. Dennis says he needs painters, so I can't do too much at many of the other things that they do. They do such a great job. But there's always something, to do.
Yeah, you don't have to go to the far corners of the world. There are opportunities.
You can babysit for the Bold group here at church. That was such a blessing to me this year to babysit. I babysat for the young mothers with Bold, and we had their children January through June, and a lot of these children had not been out away from mom. They've been home. If they were born during COVID, their socialization is not very good because and so we had a real job with a few of them because this is the first they were away from mom. But you take a 10-month-old from January to June and watch them grow. Just a fantastic thing to do, physically and emotionally and everything. So yeah, it's great.
Right here in Corrigal. So.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's wonderful having people that are available because this is such an important need to help in disaster. I mean, you think childcare, like think of building houses and all that, but the childcare thing is just so important because these people's lives are devastated, and the parents need to work and get involved. They can't have little children to care for, so it's a very important ministry that the church is involved in. So thanks so much for sharing with that, and I don't think you have to take a back seat to Lori at all. And you're a great speaker and a great communicator, so thank you so much for doing that. Now next week you're going to hear a totally different type of experience from one of our own, Ben Ware. And he's going to share some of his experiences from some years back, and I think and some current things he's doing too. So again, I just think it's a wonderful opportunity to hear. I'm learning so much. Maybe you knew all this, but I certainly didn't. And for me, it's been very beneficial to hear these stories. So we're going to sing our song, which is usually, this is my story, this is my song, and then you can go. I usually pitch it a little too low. I'll try a little higher. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior.